Well, hello. It's me again. Yeah, we've hit the 500 plus mark and we're halfway through this documentary. Like I said, I'm going to try to get 1,000 chapters before I go to my grave, and I'm not even dead yet, so there's still time. So I did promise friends and family that at about every mile marker, 50 or 100 or so, I would tell you a little bit more about myself. Uh, okay, you asked for it. Here it goes. Well, at about 9 months old, our family was taken from a little farm just off the reservation, and three of us out of the nine children were given polio by accident by the government. And this is the story I got because I was only 9 months old. At about almost 7 years old, I caught a sister disease to polio. There's about 11 of them actually that you can catch because of the susceptibility from polio. But I caught one, a bone marrow disease called Legg-Perthes disease, which deteriorates the marrow of the bone and makes the marrow forget what its job is, especially in one of the major joints. It affected my left side, which is my weaker side from the polio to begin with. So what it did was deteriorate and turn the marrow of the bone into almost like silly putty. So, as I recall, we're walking to school, and we had to walk about a mile and a half, snowy day, and the I couldn't. All of a sudden, I couldn't walk. I'd had pains for several months, but you write them off. All of a sudden, I couldn't walk, and I fell down in the snow. Well, my brother Eddie, in all his sympathy, kicked me in the head and said, "Come on, you damn fool! We're going to be late. Get your butt up and let's go to school." I couldn't get up. I couldn't stand up and walk. My sister Jeffra, about 3 sisters older than me, she came by and tried to help me stand up and then tried to help me walk. With her assistance, that wasn't going to work. I kept falling down. That I remember, she grabbed me by the pant leg, which is the only part that didn't hurt on my right side, and dragged my butt home about 2.5 blocks. And at that point, they took me to the doctor, the hospital, and they said, "We have no idea what's going on." They x-rayed me, no idea. He's got some sort of really weird bone marrow disease. So they sent me to Cornell University. Now, Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, had a children's hospital home. And what that was realistically is a death camp for children. And we went in there, they put me in a 10-bed ward and did all kinds of tests on me and figured out that I had this very strange disease called Legg-Perthes. But it wasn't unique because if anyone in New England caught a disease that wasn't understood, they didn't know what the treatment was, they didn't know what the cure was, they were put in this children's hospital home. So we had kids in there that were left there by their parents, or they ended up there because the hospital couldn't handle them. But we had chicken breast kids. That's where the lower extremities do not ever develop, and they're like a 1-year-old baby, and their upper half is an adult human. We had water on the brain. We had leukemia, cancer, tuberculosis, everything you can imagine in that hospital in the same ward. We were in a 10-bed ward. So we pretty much lost 1 to 2 people in that ward per month would die of one disease or another. And usually if you didn't die of the disease you came in with, you caught something somebody else had. So it was literally a death camp for children. But the sympathy level in that hospital was pretty much a -0. You didn't ever demand any sympathy out of anybody because you look across the hall or across in the next bed and the next kid was in 10 times worse shape than you. Most of these kids never survived past the age of 10 years old. Some of them not even past 2 or 3. But we were in there with them anyway, and I'm telling you, there's some real heroes there. Well, to make a short story long, I had come out of a home, very dysfunctional home. Both parents heavy drinkers and philanderers, whatever. And I thought that that's what I was supposed to be. So that's what I was pretty much as a kid. I was starting to be an alcoholic. I went into this children's hospital home, and I got very lucky in the home. There was an elderly couple. Well, there were a few people that came in to visit us, and they had no children, or their children were grown up and gone away. And they would bring us Christmas presents and stuff like that. But there was this old couple. In my opinion, now I came from a very poor place, and I knew what the bottom felt like. But this couple had made their mark in business and were very wealthy. At least, to my opinion, were very wealthy. They came in, and this couple gathered us up. They even bought a station wagon, if I remember right. It was a big Ford woodside wagon, and that they could put our stretchers or fold the wheelchairs up and lay us flat in the back. And they would take us out one or two at a time, whatever they could handle. And they would take us to their home for dinner or their summer camp in the summer. They'd take us to circuses. They'd take us to state fairs and push our butts around in these stretchers. And I really got lucky. And these two were madly in love with each other. And they had to be, I don't know, I was 7 years old. They had to be in their 80s maybe. Way past death, in my opinion. I didn't know people lived that long, or why. But anyway, I got to see what true love actually was, and how people in love treated each other with the respect that they treated each other. So that was one of the luckiest things in my life. Well, I survived that hospital with 4 operations from a little doctor named Dr. Lim, who put bone wedges in my marrow out of a cadaver to teach my marrow what its job was, to start producing white blood cells and stiffening the joints up and stuff. And after about 2.5 years, they got me to the point where I could learn to walk again. In about 6 months, they taught me to walk upright again with crutches and braces. And I left the hospital, and didn't take long to get rid of them damn braces, because the kids in school, very cruel to you. I mean, very, very cruel in a public school. I got rid of the braces very quickly, and also got rid of the crutches, but never got rid of the stigma. They called me Chester. It was one of the luckiest moments of my life, in the fact that I realized that I was going to be different than everybody else. My mentor on the reservation, Son Aguade, who, of course, like you already know, was the town drunk, but he was everything to me. A great storyteller, too. He told me, Guggy, you're not going to be like everybody else. You're just going to have to not look back and be the majorette of your own parade. Don't ever look back. Don't ever ask for directions of which way the parade's going to go. Just start marching to your own beat, and don't pay attention. Don't listen to anybody else. It won't do you any good. And when you look back in the parade and you find people following you, no matter how crazy you are, then you know you're doing it right. And that's pretty much the way I've lived my life. But I got lucky enough to see what true friendship and respect was from these older people. I went back to a dysfunctional home, but I didn't know any different, because when you're a kid, that's whatever you grow up with is what you grow up with. I survived that home, but only through the kindness of my 8 sisters. And without them, I would not be who I am today. I would not have come this far and done the things I've done. Now, I have an insatiable urge, of course, to travel, and anyone will tell you that. I do well into 100,000 miles a year, and as you can see from this documentary, I'm not a bit afraid to travel. I love to meet new people. I love to find out what their program is, and I just can't get enough of it. But I think the cheese slid off my cracker at youth, in the fact that they convinced me that I was never going to go anywhere in my life. Just sit my butt in a chair. I might as well get a job that's behind a desk, because that's all I was ever going to see, is whatever the view was from that window. And I believed them. I got an engineering degree, a light engineering degree, and spent 6 years in hell sitting behind a desk making somebody else a lot of money, and then went out on the road. And I've been out on the road ever since. Love it. There's only thing out on the road that I've found is impossible to find is a good reason to go home. So I'm not saying you should do this, but you should never lose that urge to meet new people, see new things, go places, do things. And I'll apologize to everybody else involved that had to suffer through this, but that's just me. That's just the way I'm made. And to this day, I'm telling you, I'm going to do everything I can until I lose my legs completely or can't travel anymore. Then I'll just do something different. I'll go back to writing or I'll go back to something. But till then, look out, world, because here I come. So that's our halfway point of this documentary. Didn't think I'd ever get this far, but you never know. And everything I've ever really set out to accomplish is really the thing that gave me the drive is to have somebody else either tell me that I'm nuts for trying it, or don't try it, you'll never succeed, or it can't be done. You just cannot do it. And I'm telling you, that's my motivator. I've had my own TV show because I thought I could never pull it off. That was very easy. I've written at least 5 books. Nothing fancy, no award winners. But I've taught comedy all the way from the Arctic Circle all the way to the equator in London. And I performed in all those places. A professional stand-up comedian, a writer, an electrician. I built windmills for a while. I built solar collectors. There's a list. I'm going to publish a list on this thing before it's done of all the crazy stuff I've done in my life. But the problem that I have is I have no fear of failing. I'd rather go to my grave saying I tried it and couldn't do it than go to my grave saying, you know, I sure wished I'd have done that. That never happens with me. I've completed my bucket list at least a half a dozen times. And I guess I'm not done writing it. I'll just keep doing it as long as I can. And don't let this be a lesson to you. It's a crazy life. But I love every minute of it. And that's the halfway point of this documentary, Ask an Injin. At this late date, I won't apologize for naming this documentary anything you do with Injin. But when I started it on YouTube, everything that said Indian was taken. I mean, everything. And just for grins, I just wrote down Ask an Injin, and it popped up that it was not taken. That's how it got its name. I've never had an Indian tell me he was insulted by the name. I've had a couple of tree huggers tell me that they were insulted that I was so demeaning to Indians, but I says, I'm an Indian. I'm not demeaned at all. So take my hint and do it. If you got something on your bucket list, do it now because life whizzes by. Again, I'm Big House, Guanalaqua. In English, it's Greg Hooper. And I'll give you contact information when I get closer to 1,000. So you can call me and tell me how much you either loved or hated this documentary. But if you don't like it, I'll double your money back. And do it yourself. Do your own documentary. They're not impossible. Don't listen to anybody else. And thanks again.